Hey, Donovan Keith here, and in this video I want to walk through how to create your own custom deformer in Cinema 4D that allows you to create effects like this. It's what I'm going to call a progressive Y twist modifier. This is based on a question from Zin Wildman in the Pixel Fondue Discord as well as in the C4D procedural Discord, and it's a fun thing. I initially thought it would be possible to create this effect using a twist with a linear fall off, and we can even try that right now, but it did not work how I expected it. It didn't sort of work how my brain thought it should work. So if I bring in my twist, I'm going to fit it to my parent, I'm going to adjust the amount of twist, I get something like this sort of nice progressive feeling. However, if I was to add in a field, a linear field to control this, just using the y-axis here, it's sort of pinching in the center in a way that I just really didn't anticipate this is what the result was, and I was working to sort of tweak it and fix it. And I think it's, the key thing here is that there's a difference between taking a constant twist and sort of adjusting the strength of that, sort of like blurring it back to or mixing it back with no twist versus this progressive twist deformation, which is that it starts with no twist whatsoever and that the total angle of the twist is increasing. And that is the thing that we are modifying. So how does this thing work? How would we build it? I'll give you a sort of a very high level sort of understanding of what's going on here. So in this mesh, and I'm just going to delete this so it's a little bit clearer. In my mesh right here, let's say we've got a y-axis, right? So this is going straight up. This is our y-axis. And over here, let's take our this guy. Let's say we've got a point that is right here. So this point is, I don't know, or here, let's do one here, maybe one here, one here, one here, one here. And we could express these points relative to this y-axis like so. So here is, let's call this the index of the point, let's say, right? So those are our points, boop, 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 boop. And their y position relative to this y-axis, the bounding box of this, sort of just starts out over here down at the bottom. The next one goes up about a quarter of the way. The next one a little bit higher. The next one on and on and on. So we get this kind of like linear pattern here. And we can use this sort of height along the bounding box to control the amount of twist that we're performing. So in order to do this, I'm going to, for all of my points, figure out the bounding box of the entire shape. Then I want to figure out where that point is relative to the y-axis of that bounding box, and then use that to control the amount of twist for that shape. So let's say something like this. So this guy, not going to twist it very much. This one, I'm going to twist quite a bit more. This one, I'm going to twist even more. This one, I'm going to twist even more still. And this one, I might do a full 360-degree rotation. So the amount of twist, again, is being controlled by this. And if we want, we can pipe this through a spline. So maybe there's very little twist at the beginning, and then the amount of twist increases quite a bit by the end, giving us something that looks like this user interface here. So let's dive into the node graph, give you a sense of where we're headed, and then we'll build it from scratch. I'll probably mess up along the way, and you can see me do that too. So as I open this up right here, the initial node graph seems pretty simple. We're grabbing the bounding box. We're bringing in a spline. So this is our, the spline is the spline graph, right? The points modifier here, this is the thing that's doing all the heavy lifting for us. It is going through every single point in the object that it's deforming, and then it's bringing in some information. It's bringing in the bounding box information, the minimum value, the maximum value of the bounding box. It's bringing in the position of the point, and then it's going to reinterpret those positions. So it's getting that y position relative to the bounding box. And then it is piping that relative position to the bounding box through a couple of controls for start and end. So you've got a little bit more control over the look. It's then remapping those again to a 0 to 1 value. Then here we've got our spline mapper, which is allowing the user to draw a custom control for how the twist is happening. And then This is scaling or adjusting the strength of an angle or a total twist, which is then being used to transform a point. So every single point in our mesh is coming in here. We're figuring out where it is relative along the height, and we're using that to power the amount of rotation for this transform point or transform vector node. And all of that's being written back out here to the geometry. So let's go ahead and build this from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and create a cogwheel. I'm going to turn off this center hole. I'm going to adjust on the object tab here the plane to XZ, so it's quite a bit smaller. I'm going to scale it down, I don't know, quite a bit. I'm going to add an extrude, make this the child of the extrude. By default, it's sort of pushing down. I'm going to change the direction here to Y up, and maybe I'll just scale down my cogwheel until I get something nice and sort of proportional like this. Now, because we're going to be doing a lot of twisting, a lot of deformation, I want to make sure that I've got enough vertical subdivision here. So I am going to go to my extrude, and in my object tab, I'm going to increase my number of subdivisions. So now we're getting additional vertical subdivisions of this shape. So we'll have enough to deform. So let's go ahead now, and I'm going to go to garage shading, and I'm going to add a nodes modifier. So I'm going to hit Shift C, search for nodes modifier, and I'm going to drag this down below my extrude to deform my extrude here. So let's call this Y twist deformer or modifier. We can call it progressive Y twist modifier. So we get something like this. I'm going to go to my nodes layout so I can see what's going on here. I'm going to hide this away, maybe move this over to the side right here. So I've got more room for my node editor. Go to my attributes tab, click on this Y twist modifier. So with this, I want to get a points modifier in here. That's the thing that's going to control the movement here. So I'm going to double click and search for points modifier. The points modifier is a special group that again goes through every single point in your geometry and modifies it. It's got some helpful inputs, like you can adjust whether you want to restrict it to some selected points or bring in things like vertex color, vertex map, but we can just wire it up and dive right in. So the simplest way to maybe explain what's going on here is I'm going to take my position right here. I'm going to bring in my position from the other side. And let's see what happens when I take position X, position Y, position Z. Nothing really happens, but I'm going to try something now. I'm going to take position Y and add it to position X. So I'm going to do add. And we're going to see what happens now when I take my position X and add to it my position Y and plug that into X. And what we see is over the height of this thing, it moves over further. So if I was to extrude this more, you'd see it just would keep pushing over to X. And if I wanted, I could take this value, the amount of Y, and I could scale that value. So scale allows me to control the strength of that. And that's the basics of what we're going to do. We're going to use that Y position to control some of this. So I'm going to, let's get a little bit more specific about what we're doing here. I want to bring in the bounding box of my geometry. I'm honestly not sure if I'm going to get a performance benefit from what I'm about to do, but I think I might. So if you're curious, you might profile it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one level up, and I'm going to calculate my bounding box. So I don't want to do that for every point. I want to do it once at the beginning. And now with my bounding box, I'm going to take my two values here. I've got X, I've got Y and Y. I'm going to pipe this in by just dragging and choosing add new input. I'm going to call this Y min. Y min. I'm going to drag in this next one. I'm going to call it Y max. And we might even call it BB or bounding box. BB Y min. BB Y max. And now I'm going to bring in these two values, BB Y min, BB Y max, and I'm going to use what's called a range mapper to transform these values. So I'm going to choose a range mapper. And I'm going to say, if I get a position y, so I'm going to drag that into my input, between BB min and BB max, I want to go between the values output min and output max. And those are 0 and 1 by default. So that's what I want. I want to basically normalize or convert to a range of 0 to 1 the y position of a given point in my object. So if I use that now to scale this value right here. So now I've got my range mapper here. The first value is 0, but if I increase that, you can see it's sort of increasing over time. So now let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's add another control in here. So rather than a direct scale of this value, I am going to put this through a spline mapper. So I'm going to search for spline mapper, drag this over. I'm going to take the input from my range mapper. I'm going to take it and I'm going to plug it into my scale here. This sort of first input for the scale is sort of the maximum value. And now our spline mapper is going to adjust the strength over the course of this spline. And we can see the amount of whatever this is varying along the height of the bounding box. And that's what we're doing here. So rather than adjusting this position, I want to rotate my point position and then set it. So let's do this. Let us add a transform point node, which redirects to the transform vector. So I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to make sure that the operation is transform point. If I'm being honest, I really don't know exactly why it matters that a vector versus a normal versus a point is being transformed, but apparently the math is different. So I'm going to choose transform point. Inside of here, I want to take my point position. So I'm going to take that top right there. I'm going to plug it in here. I'm going to go over here to transform point. I'm going to output that to the final position right here. And what I want to do is get rid of this add node, right? That was just a cheap hack. Instead, I'm going to take my scale and I'm going to use that to adjust the amount of rotation along y. So dragging this right here, I'm now getting a variable amount of rotation along the y-axis, I believe, and we're about to find out if I'm lying, for our position, and then we're setting it. Now, the reason we're not seeing a change is that this big wire here is being overridden by these smaller wires. So I'm going to disconnect those. And then this looks like crazy. And that's because Cinema 4D and scene nodes under the hood are not using degrees, right? So this is not 121 degrees. This is 121 what are called radians. And just know that like 6 of those is a full 360, roughly 6. So to get something that this understands, I'm going to choose a special type of input. I'm going to go and double click and I'm going to search for IO for input output. And I'm going to search for angle. And I'm going to drag this out. And now I'm going to connect this angle here to the input. So I can now adjust the total angle. And we can see that this is adjusting here the amount based on what we're doing. So we've actually got basically the whole thing. We've got our spline mapper, we've got our kind of twisting, and what we can do is start outputting some of these values. So I'm going to take my spline mapper, and I'm going to drag this spline input. I'm going to drag out and drag it onto this right here and choose add new input. And we've got our angle. So let's now come up one level higher. I'm going to drag out my angle, choose add new input. I'm going to drag out my spline and choose add new input. And we're just building a custom user interface for this guy. So I've got my angle. I've got this. And I've basically got everything I need to control this look. And I guess if I'm being honest, I don't even need that min-max range. I could add it if I want. And let's tweak the UI just a little bit, and maybe we'll go back and add those min and max. I'm going to right click here and choose to edit my resource. Inside of here, I'm going to take angle and spline. I'm holding down command to single click on them, and I'm going to drag them into the object tab so they're separate. Angle, I like to set reasonable limits here. So I'm going to choose show slider, slider limits. I'm going to say negative 720 to 720. And my spline, that's fine by default. So now I can adjust from negative 720 to positive 720. And I want to have a min and max value here. So like a 0 to 1, where does it start? Where does it end? So I'm going to get another range mapper and slip it in between here. So I'm going to add a range mapper. I'm going to plug the output of this range mapper. So like how far are we along the Y sort of component of our bounding box? And I want to adjust the sort of input min, input max here. So I'm going to drag out input min. I'm going to drag out input max. And I'm going to plug the result here into Spline Mapper. Go back up here. I'm going to choose to search for IO float. Strength, let's say. I'm going to do IO strength again, because that'll give me a nice 0 to 100. Plug these in. Call the first one min, second one max. And now I can kind of adjust here where it starts, where it ends, or I can even exceed this if I want it to sort of cleanly go beyond the top and cleanly go beyond the bottom. There's a lot that I can do here. And if I want, I can edit my resource. And minimum, maximum, I'm going to put below angle, but above spline. And minimum, I'm going to set to 0 by default. And angle, let's set that to 360 by default. And that, I believe, is kind of the whole thing. I've got my progressive twist. I've got the ability to adjust my minimum, my maximum. I can come over here and adjust this spline. And there you go. I hope that this was informative. The points modifier, I think, is a really great tool for exploring scene nodes, because yes, you're basically doing core math, right? Like you're just doing mathematics in the middle here, but you don't have to worry about getting and setting points or iteration or any of those more complicated things. You're just sort of creating a function that you're applying to every single point based on what's changing here. All right. Let me know if you've got any questions. I'll do my best to answer, and otherwise, have fun out there.